Way back in the middle of last year, people online were complaining about the meme ban, which was an EU directive on how internet companies handle copyright. When it was pretty much defeated back in July of last year, it looked like things were going to be okay. But in September, the EU passed a reform proposal that would allow them to push an amended form of the directive through again at some point this year. So, what are Articles 11 and 13, and why do they suck? Both of these are part of the European Union Directive on Copyright in the Digital Single Market, which, according to its lobbyists, aims to shrink the pay gap between internet publishers that profit off of copyrighted work, like YouTube, Reddit, and Facebook, and the creators of said works. Article 11 has been called the link tax because it would force services like Google News and other link aggregators to license excerpts that they display under the headlines if they exceed the vague definition of a couple words. This was actually tried in Spain and Germany back in 2013, which resulted in Google just no longer servicing those regions for a while. Article 13 is the more concerning point of this directive and the one most talked about. Basically, it would work like the Digital Millennium Copyright Act here in the United States, but a lot dumber. It would hold every internet publisher responsible for enforcing copyright restrictions on their services, and was for a while floating the idea of forcing every site to have a content filter like YouTube's wonderful Content ID system. So, why does this directive suck? Article 11 would force news aggregates to license the excerpts that they use from articles and pay for them. However, they don't explicitly define an excerpt nor how long an excerpt can be before it requires restrictions. It is a sentence, a couple words, a single word. They never actually say, which makes it a pain in the ass to adhere to. Also, it really doesn't make sense because Google News and other aggregates drive an insane amount of traffic to news sites to the point that a lot of these sites actually optimize themselves to appear higher up on these aggregates. Germany and Spain tried to implement a quotation tax back in 2013, which caused a lot of media sites to get completely owned after Google News just stopped including them in their service, which killed their revenue. Some have argued that the EU would be better at bargaining with monoliths like Google because of the potential to lose the traffic of almost 500 million people, but who knows? Maybe they'll drop them again, or just be forced to fork up the cash. Article 13 is really the worst one because it harms the internet as we know it. Putting the responsibility of enforcing copyright onto platforms that host user content has pretty much never worked. Every minute, 300 hours of content is uploaded to YouTube. If you wanted to pay a staff to watch all the content uploaded to YouTube by this point in the video, you would need roughly 17 full-time employees to work an entire work week. The only way to reasonably enforce these restrictions would be for sites to implement the content recognition systems like Content ID, which, as we know, don't fuck up at all. We all also know that it never lets people who don't actually own the rights to certain content to make claims for the content that they don't own. My friend C-Tactics, otherwise known as Ben, just got hit with a copyright strike on an anime review from the fucking seismic safety evaluation of concrete dams. These systems don't work, have never worked, and will probably never work well enough that anyone could call them reasonable. They're always going to mess up, they're always going to be abused. Even though I think they remove the actual requirement to have these in place, they will pretty much be necessary for anyone hosting large amounts of content. Plus, nobody really knows how things like fair use and parody rights will be applied within this new internet, which is how this got coined the meme ban. Article 13 not only has the potential to restrict actual copyrighted content, but also derivative works as well. Editing TV and movie clips for shits would be restricted, using screenshots for memes would be restricted, and also making content that reviews other copyrighted works like movies and video games, which is already a finicky matter here in the land of the free, would be restricted, which is why a lot of people have been calling Article 13 a means for censorship. If you can't use another party's content to support an argument, how are you able to criticize it? You really can't. So in all, Article 11 and 13, as well as the rest of the directive, sucks fucking shit and needs to be banished to the shadow realm ASAP. At its worst, it kills the internet as we know it. At its not worst, but still pretty shitty, it makes creating and viewing user-generated content tedious and boring. There's other parts of it, like how it affects things like thumbnails for content, which combined with the quotation tax article, would make it almost impossible to see what you're actually clicking on that I left out in the name of time. I wanted to keep this video brief and mostly pertinent to YouTube, but if you want to know more, here's some links that will be in the description that explain things pretty well and are great jumping off points for more research. The history of this directive is pretty weird and complicated, with things being changed or dropped over time, and I'm also a dumb American that has no bearing on how the administrative side of the EU works, so I heavily urge you to do your own research on the matter. If you want to do something, SaveTheInternet.info is a great place to find things like petitions, fundraisers, and the contact info for your MEPs, so go on there and get involved. We only have until February 12th, which is tomorrow, to influence the vote on the reformed proposal before it goes up for a formal vote sometime in like March or April, so act fast. Thank you guys for watching, and the best of luck. Peace.